All right, great. Now we get to look at size of a business. And it's a relatively short topic, and we only have two objectives this time around. First of all, we're going to look at how business size can be measured. And secondly, we are going to look at the significance of small and family businesses for the economy. Let's get started. Now, business size may be dependent on the sector, and we discussed this before that some organizations are not for profit, some are social enterprises. So, organizations may offer free services. In situations like that, revenue may not be a good indicator of size, particularly when it comes to social enterprises, as we discussed before. And it's also important to note that profit, although we may be tempted to use it to measure business size and say, oh, well, this business makes a lot of profit, that means it's a big organization. Well, that doesn't follow because profit is used to measure the success of a business's operations, but it is not a measure of business size. Okay, so just keep that in mind. So, if revenue is not always a measure of business size, and if profit is not a measure of business size, how then can we measure the size of a business? Well, first of all, the turnover. And this is an instances where the business is for profit, unlike when a business is offering free products or services. So in the case where a business is in fact selling goods or services with the intention of making a profit, then we can use the turnover, which is just basically revenue from what they're selling, to measure the size of the business. The number of employees is also a great indicator of the size of your business, because if you have 3 employees, I can tell that your operations are not that extensive, but someone else will have 200 employees, and you can tell that, okay, from the number of employees you have a ton of operations going on. That means you must be a huge business in that kind of a case. Again, market value of the business. So basically the value of its shares. The market value of a business should tell you how big the business is. Other indicators such as the number of stores, the number of vehicles. If it's a school institution, the number of students obviously should tell you how big the school is. Okay. Now, what is the importance or the role of small businesses in an economy? Obviously, like any other business, they create and provide jobs, thus reducing unemployment. So the government obviously welcomes any operation in its society that helps to reduce unemployment, of course, within the regulations. Again, provides competition for established businesses. Obviously, with competition, we've discussed that competition brings about new ideas. It challenges existing businesses to improve on their services, improve on the quality of their goods and services. So it's good for competition. New sources of innovation. We'll look around us and we see a lot of tech companies opening up here and there, and they're usually small companies. And some of these big companies that we know now, for example, Apple, these are people that actually started just at home in their garage, just starting a business there. And so, especially in the era of technology, it's not limited to technology, but I just picked technology as an example. But a lot of businesses start just with an idea, and they start very small. Could be a group of young people, friends, just get together with an idea, and before you know it, it grows. There we go. It has, small businesses have the potential to grow, so it will eventually contribute towards the economy on a much larger scale. But even if they are still small, they can provide all of these other benefits to an economy, and obviously we hope that they will grow to make an even greater impact. Can operate in niches to provide specialist services. Obviously, sometimes when we have large companies may not focus so much on the specific needs of maybe a small segment of the market. For example, now we know that a lot of people are moving away from eating meats, for example, and we know that there are these other diets that are creeping up in society. I say creeping up because, well, almost every year there's a new diet there. We have paleo, we have keto, we have all these diets, and so you'll find out that the mainstream, the big businesses, for example, producers may not consider um, producing products for people who subscribe to a vegan lifestyle or vegetarians. But if you are a small business, you're able to target that market and actually start providing goods and services that other organizations might not have. You might start your own brand of vegan foods and the like, and just service that little small market, that small segment that would actually like your goods and services. I hope that makes sense. Moving along. So, what are the advantages of small businesses? Advantages of small businesses are more or less like the advantages of a sole trader that we discussed before. So for one, it's relatively easy to set up, generally because it's on a small scale. Number two, it's flexible because decisions are made quickly. It's small, you'd have to discuss with probably one or two other people depending on the size of your business. So you can generally make decisions quickly. And we hope that communication is easier because, again, you're just communicating amongst very few people. And the hope is that is run by motivated people. And that's usually the case with small businesses. And the reason why it's often run by motivated people is because you find out that the people own the businesses. Okay, they are actually the owners. That's why I said it's very likely that it's being run by a sole trader who owns a business. So they tend to work hard because they have a stake in it, a high stake in it. Okay, apart from all these advantages, what are some of the challenges or disadvantages of small businesses? Obviously, they lack power in the market. So even when it comes to purchasing, we know that if you are a big business, you are likely to be in a position where you can purchase in bulk. And sometimes when you purchase in bulk, you get discounts and things like that. But if you're a small business and you're unable to purchase in bulk, that means you may not be able to enjoy some of those benefits, like getting a discount and the like. So your power in the market is quite limited. Obviously, you may lack experience because most of these small businesses are just starting out or are just on a small scale. So you lack exposure as to know what exactly is happening elsewhere and what's trending, the like. But it's not always the case. You can be a small business and still have experience and try and gain some power in the market. So there are ways around these challenges, but if you're not thinking out the box, these are the challenges that you're likely to face. Now, obviously, may find it difficult to raise finances for the very reason that you're small and it's probably being run by a sole trader in any case. So, but the advantage of being in a country where the government is concerned about small businesses is that governments may come to the aid of small businesses by lowering their taxes and placing less regulation on such companies. So you'll find out that on some big companies, they may impose much stricter regulations, like, for example, the requirements of opening up a company or a business may be more stringent for big businesses, but if it's just going to be a small business, they may be less stringent on their requirements. And even when it comes to operating, again, they might actually decide to lower their taxes for small businesses. Okay. Now, family businesses, without having to define what it is generally, but they're businesses that are run by a family. Okay, so they may have fewer disagreements because of shared values, but it is generally what is hoped for amongst family businesses. That you probably have the same culture, you probably have the same ideas, so we expect that there are fewer disagreements. Members tend to be very hardworking because they have a sense of ownership. That is true. May be supportive of each other. That is also true because you're family and it's expected of you to be supportive of each other. But we do know that in some cases that is not the case. But generally speaking, the hope is that people are supportive. Maybe willing to plan long term, and obviously you may be willing to plan long term because this is your family. Members may also be willing to provide finance and support, obviously because of the sense of ownership. When you have a sense of ownership, you tend to go an extra mile. And so they may also be willing to work for less in the short term, because obviously in the long term, you cannot always work for less. But you find out that generally, sometimes family owned businesses, people may even go for a stretch without, receiving a steady flow of income, particularly when starting off. But generally speaking, they're more willing than if it was a non-family member. Now, there are also challenges within family businesses. Let's have a look at that. Whilst we said that people get along because they have shared values, the other side is that decisions are often emotional rather than rational. This is true. And so people sometimes in family businesses tend to, now the word that I want to use is be unprofessional. I don't necessarily want to say unprofessional, but that's exactly what it is in certain cases, that there isn't a difference between how the family interacts at home and how the family interacts at work. So that professionalism is at times lacking in a family business. And you find out that in a situation like that, people tend to be very emotional and not rational, as in they don't think through their choices. Family members may lack experience, but positions are kept for members only. That is very true. You get a job because you are part of the family, not because you have experience in certain incidences. And as a matter of fact, it doesn't really matter whether you have experience or not. The fact that you're just family will give you a role, and you find out in family businesses that they often do not have people who are not part of the family. If there are people who are not part of the family, then they're definitely not in management. It's harder to manage the relationships, of course, because again, the inability to separate the home setup or the family setup to the business setup. And so if people had an argument at home, then they bring it to work. Or if you work with your daughter and your daughter is relatively emotional at home and she comes to work and she's still the same old emotional person at work, it becomes hard to manage, especially if people lack that professionalism that's required in business. Okay, so now we're going to take a shift and talk about ways that businesses can grow internally. You'll notice in our previous slides on business structure, we spoke about how they can grow externally by integration. Now we're talking about how they can grow internally or organically. Well, first of all, they can expand their existing operations by trying to get to grow sales, of existing products. And so you have your products and you need to start producing more of your products so that you can reach more people. So you will try to market your products more, or you'll have different strategies to try and just increase your sales of what you currently have. Another way that you can grow your business is by developing new products and services. And obviously, when you develop new products and services, you attract a new market for those, and that's another way that you can grow. Again, you find new markets. We spoke about local, national, multinational businesses. Multinational businesses are those that have sought new markets in other nations, for example, and even national businesses can find new markets in other nations. And you can be a small local business and still be able to find new markets within that area. And you do a bit of research and you find out who would like your products and your services, and that way you grow your business by generally finding out if there are any other people that are interested in what you're offering. Now, why would you want to grow as a small business? Well, to have greater buying power, we spoke about that, increased market share, increased profits, increased business value, and of course, pride. Obviously, you have a sense of achievement after you establish something that grows into something significant. Great. So that was nice and short. That's the end of business science. Next up, we will be looking at business objectives.